On the 30th of August 1949, the first stock car race to be held in Great Britain was run on the Grand Prix circuit at Silverstone, where Mr. Lyons of the Jaguar Company has left his place in the spectator stand to chat with the drivers and wish them good luck.
For a decade or more during the post-war years, the name Jaguar dominated the world of sports car racing, notching up numerous wins at endurance events, including 5 victories at the famous Le Mans 24 Hours. But by the end of the 50s, and with all his competitive ambitions fulfilled, Jaguar boss Sir William Lyons decided to quit racing and focus instead on the production of road cars.
Sir William, there's the knockouts painting of the C-Type, the first car to win Le Mans at 100 miles an hour. When shall we see Jaguar going racing again?
You can rest assured that we have this well in mind. We are watching the developments of racing, and we believe we could get back into the ring any time we feel it's necessary.
But 3 decades were to pass before the Jaguar team raced again. And as the 20th century drew to a close, they had yet to take on the ultimate challenge of Formula One. At the Frankfurt Motor Show, journalists from all over the world gather to review the latest in driver technology. This year the floor is buzzing with rumours that the present chairman of Jaguar, Dr. Wolfgang Reitzler, is about to make an important announcement.
Formula One is, of course, at the pinnacle of world motorsport. It is the ultimate test of competitiveness in terms of technology and progressive engineering expertise. Jaguar, for the first time in its history, will from now on compete in the Formula One World Championship.
But the world of Formula One is a tough place to be for a new team, and much has changed since the glories of Le Mans half a century ago. Jaguar Racing face some tough challenges in the months ahead before they even make it to the starting line. Jaguar's first move on the slippery chessboard of Formula One has been to acquire the racing team, founded by Jackie Stewart and his son Paul. Although the new season is still 5 months away, time has already become a precious commodity.
Well, I think we've got to get this sorted out in the next, very short time.
Now 60 years of age, Stewart has a lifetime of motor racing experience to offer Jaguar. But success for Formula One's newest arrivals will depend on much more than the legacy of one man.
There's no substitute for teamwork. Nobody's going to do anything on their own. You've got to depend on good people. Gary Anderson's our technical director, big man, powerful man, strong opinions, and a good leader.
But you still get that, don't you? You just cut down into a radius. Yeah, it'll drop back a bit like a McLaren does. I think everybody contributes towards the end result, don't they? I mean, there's always little bits coming out, there's always little bits found, there's always solutions that somebody else has found a solution to. It's like all these guys here, that any one of them would do things differently, and there really is only one correct solution.
What I always said to Q was that, see this point here, see if you can see this point here. There's a 20-degree chamfer that chamfers down to the single skin thickness there. So it goes from the 8mm section, chamfers down at 20 degrees to the 2mm section.
You're trying to develop the car during the year as well, so it's never ever a 9 to 5 by any means for anybody. And for me, I've got to try to get my head around what tomorrow's problems will be more than what's in front of you today.
The clinical environment of the carbon fibre workshop is where Anderson's new design will begin to be realised. Thousands of man-hours are required to build each car, and total accuracy is vital. The failure of just one tiny component could decide the race.
It takes like 3 or 4 weeks to get a car, one car. I mean, how many cars do we do by February?
This year we'll probably have 5 cars ready by
5 cars.
February, but we're building maybe 8 cars. So when you smash one, back to square one again.
When the season gets underway in March, race director Andy Miller will play a key role, overseeing team tactics and providing a crucial link between driver and machine. His main concern right now, though, is to get the new car ready as soon as possible.
It never stops. The first deadline is usually the shakedown. You put a sort of line in the sand and say, right, by that date we want to have a car running on the circuit. And the design office is flat out until Christmas, really, doing the new designs and developments. September, October, but then in October through, it's just flat out, just trying to get everything built in time.
We're struggling to get things done for the 1st of January. It could be like, say, the 6th of January when all the signs go up.
Good.
For the 13th of December meeting, do you need anything, any input from us on
I don't think so.
more specific things? If he asks you anything...
Hi there, hi. Sorry for the delay upstairs, but we ran into quite a lot of trouble today. Paul, Neil and I have been consumed by that since this morning.
Okay.
So excuse us.
All right, no problem.
All right, have fun.
We always do.
They all have big responsibilities under them, and the very nature of Formula 1 is it's quite an explosive sport, business, and there's always issues that are coming up that need to be resolved, and they need to be resolved yesterday type of thing, because it's so fast moving.
We've got at some time, and I don't know when you're going to do this, whether it's today or another day, but Neil and I have to have a conversation that carried over from Detroit, and I don't know whether you've got that piece of paper that you write. So
the only thing I can do is just ask Rob to kick off on the working group meeting.
Well, even if it's a matter of a few minutes, Paul, what we have to discuss is quite important. And secondly, you've got to discuss these other issues that you and I briefly touched on, and I think that's something we can't do on camera.
He's probably one of the most demanding men I've ever met. He's very intense, he's very hard on everybody, and he expects a lot, and I think that's just obviously being a driver himself, and he expected a lot from himself, so he expects a lot from other people.
Far away from the growing tensions at the factory, driver Johnny Herbert relaxes in the sunny tranquility of Monaco, where he now lives. The time he spends here provides welcome relief from the never-ending routine of travelling, testing and racing.
It's nice to get away from it all. It's nice to get away from the pressure, get your thoughts together. Being a family man, obviously, it's probably very important for me, obviously, to try and get with my 2 daughters who don't see me very often. So I've got to try and get there as much as I can. There's probably a little bit of work before Christmas, and then it really starts in earnest in January. So it's a very, very long year.
Johnny's new teammate is a different kind of beast altogether. Arriving fresh from Ferrari, Eddie Irvine was runner-up in last year's championship. Controversial, outspoken, and not just fast in a racing car.
Thank you for your remarks last night. Were you still there when I said that you were better at taking trousers off than putting them on?
No, I had left.
I thought you had.
a spy there. I had a spy.
They got a good laugh.
They got a good laugh. Eddie Irvine, he's very radical. He speaks his mind. Sometimes some would say outspoken. But I like that. And I think Jaguar need that.
You know, I live my life the way I like to live it. And I don't, you know, someone asked me where I was last night and I was in a nightclub. I'll say I was in a nightclub. You know, a lot of drivers will say they were in bed at 10 o'clock when they were actually probably lying under some, you know, car, drunk as a skunk somewhere.
Well, anyway, Neil you'll see a lot of, and he's your man to have a good relationship with. You got your fitting?
Yeah, just need to do these, what we do them down there.
Mm-hmm.
Just airbags.
Yeah. Proportionally, haven't you got a longer body than you have legs? So, in fact, the legs are, which would normally be a more likely a problem. And in fact, when you were in the car there, I thought you were very low in the car. I thought it looked good.
Today is Eddie's first indication of what Gary Anderson's brand new Jaguar will feel like.
Best
The steering wheel is actually quite hard. I don't understand. Because see, my boat, I can't turn more than that because my hand hits my bolts.
He will, on occasions, have to be patient with certain things because he's coming from a team which no doubt had a much bigger budget and has been contending for the World Championship has been contending, which we have never contended for the World Championship yet. So he needs to be patient with that and assist us as much as we can help him.
But with a facility crammed with computers and carbon fibre, Jaguar has certainly come a long way since its humble beginnings in Blackpool, Lancashire. It was here in September 1922 that a young motorcycle enthusiast by the name of William Lyons borrowed a few £100 and with his partner William Walmsley started the Swallow Sidecar Company. From this small workshop, a variety of sidecars were built to suit the various makes of motorcycle that were around at the time. Their expertise in vehicle coachwork then led to a lucrative contract producing the Austin Swallow, and it wasn't long before they were forced to vacate their humble facility and move to a larger plant in Coventry. By the 30s, Lyons was employing over 1,000 men, turning out cars with a style and grace that would come to define the era. The name Swallow Sidecars became abbreviated to SS, and it was an SS 100 car that won the Alpine Rally in 1936, an indication of the kind of speed and reliability that would become a hallmark in later years. But the onset of World War II brought a halt to such grand designs, and the factory began contributing to the war effort by producing aircraft parts. Situated in one of the most bombed areas of Britain, the Coventry plant was lucky to survive the war. When peacetime finally returned to Britain, it was back to the usual business of car production, this time with one very significant difference.
The name SS wasn't very popular. I don't think. I asked our publicity people to let me have a list of animals, birds and so on, and I picked Jaguar out and thought it was very good, and I've never regretted it.
And so the brand was born. By the end of the decade, car production was back in full flow, and construction of their first high-performance sports car, the XK120, had begun. A glorious decade of racing lay just around the corner. 50 years later, the Jaguar plant at Browns Lane still remains, but much has changed in over half a century. Many of the workers here share a passion for motor racing, and the prospect of being part of the glamorous world of Formula One has been greeted with much enthusiasm.
It's nice to be back in that sort of...
Nice to be back in the top bracket, yeah.
Yeah, you sort of get a bit of pride in his sort of news, and there's listening to radios and things.
They've been away too long, but they've been away long enough, like, you know.
Yeah.
They need to be back there now.
So it does, it boosts everything, doesn't it? Boosts the morale of the workforce.
All the others that have been out there, and Jaguar hasn't been there, they're going to be shaking in the shoes, hopefully, right? You know, Jaguar's coming back with a big time now, you know.
It's teamwork. If you've got the right team, that's where you're going to hit it.
If you've got the right team, the right tools, the right car, there's no reason why on this earth why we shouldn't do it.
The first model of what will become known as the R1 is beginning to take shape, and the new team hope to be testing the car in a few weeks. For the time being, the colour of the car is similar to the British racing green of yesteryear. The chance of it remaining that way, however, is extremely unlikely. Formula One in the 21st century has become an exercise in corporate branding, and the final choice of both colour and design will be the subject of much debate over the coming weeks. At Jaguar's design facility in Whitley, the creative team is striving to come up with a look which will make a big impression at racing circuits all over the world.
It's important we can't let the sponsorship dominate the green car. On the other hand, we can't let our green car dominate the sponsors. We must make sure the sponsors are going to be happy with what we've got. And that's going to be a fine balance, because there's a number of people in there, a number of companies in there that all have to be looked at.
We would start off with British Racing Green, but ultimately we'd probably try and tune the colour so that it would be more applicable to the track and for photography. In 1955, when the D-types were running at Le Mans, a dark green car on a black track looks pretty boring, even if you win the race. So it's probably important to take that colour and tune it so that it picks up on photographs, picks up on TV, and looks good on film.
Yeah, I think it's the easier option, but I think if we can get the paint to work, then I'd rather go down that road.
Back at Milton Keynes, the pace is beginning to heat up. There is much more to prepare than just the car.
We'll have the trucks in one colour, we'll have the same colour used on the fuel bowsers and all that kind of equipment. And if possible, yeah, because I just think it'll keep the consistency then. I mean, obviously the Formula One is driven by money and the sponsors involved, you know, it's a lot more high profile now than what it ever was. We've got to make it look good in order to satisfy our sponsors, get over the messages that they want to achieve.
The sport has come a long way from the days when you simply applied a coat of green paint to your Jaguar and went motor racing.
In those days, no advertising was allowed at all, and I mean none. The only advertising you'd see, funnily enough, is Pirelli or Dunlop on your overalls. That was, I think, about the only thing you'd see, nothing on the cars.
The most prominent element of the racing car, in fact, was a big white circle with a big black number on it. Today, in our Formula One cars, the number is extremely small. I mean, the number's only about this size. The number doesn't pay anything.
"1951 saw the British Racing Drivers Club organise another top-line meeting at Silverstone, driven by some of the star names of the British racing world, such as Stirling Moss.
Now, what you've got to realise is, at that time, things were totally different. I mean, totally different. First of all, you're talking about drivers mostly were amateur. I mean, I happened to be professional, but I was very amateur professional.
It's only a few minutes before starting time now, and the drivers are trooping away from the pits to listen to last-minute instructions, which will be given to them by the clerk of the course. In addition to a discourse on safe driving and gentlemanly conduct, they will be reminded of the meaning of the various flag signals.
A yellow flag meant caution. Now, you be careful. It didn't say if you pass another guy, it's going to cost you money or you're going to be out of it. I mean, it's difficult for me to understand what the hell they're doing now, in truth, because in those days it was so much fun. It was so the way it should be. It was so right.
These Jaguar XK drivers are a pretty fast bunch, but Stirling went steadily through the lot, and by the end of the fourth lap he was out in the lead, never to be even remotely challenged for the rest of the race. With Stirling getting the checkered flag, the race comes to an end with another arresting success for the Jaguar.
"50 years later, the echoes of a bygone age still reverberate around a deserted and wintry Silverstone. But today is special. A little bit of history is about to repeat itself. Behind the garage doors, the all-new Jaguar Racing team are hoping to give the R1 its first outing. The honour of this task will fall to the team's test driver, Luciano Berti. And so, 78 years after William Lyons made his first sidecar, a Formula One Jaguar takes to the track for the very first time. the upbeat mood in the garage is about to change. The team are about to discover a problem that will lose them valuable testing time before the World Championship begins in March. Gary Anderson will have a few more grey hairs by then. Teams are always pushing to gain any possible advantage in Formula One, and frequently have to take a step back in order to go forward.
Just got this new system that we've trying for the first time, and it's causing us some problems. We'd like to do more running, but this is what Shakedown's about. But sometimes difficult to pick out iron out the problems when you run the car for the first time.
Everyone involved expects nothing less than a world-beating car. The only way to get one will be to work even harder. It will no doubt be a tall order for the new team to come even close to matching Jaguar's past achievements.
Le Mans. For nearly half a century, this attractive town, as typically French as the gendarme, has been famous as a centre of motorsport. Today, the 24-hour race is the most important sports car event in the world.
Always, really. I mean, Le Mans has been a very important race, there's no doubt about it. Far more important, really, than it is to the manufacturer than it is to a driver, really. But the importance of winning is enormous.
30 seconds to go, and the crowd is stilled. The flag falls, and the Sterling sprints across to his car. The unbearable tension subsides in the sound and fury of the Le Mans star.
Le Mans in the 50s was classified as possibly one of the premier top races. It was the top race, I would put it, in the world. Because there was nowhere else where they were doing a 24-hour endurance on that type of running.
Jaguar and Le Mans were destined for each other. At its first outing in 1950, the XK120 ran well, but ultimately missed out on a top spot on the podium. But victory would not be long in coming. Just 1 year later, and using a modified version of the car, now known as the C-Type, the driving partnership of Walker and Whitehead came home ahead of the pack to give Jaguar its first win. The Big Cats won again in 1953, when the C-Type became the first car ever to use disc brakes. A standard item now, but back then a revolutionary innovation. The motor racing world was beginning to sit up and take notice.
This is a time to celebrate, to drink to the glories of the past, the successes of the present, and the achievements of the future.
When you'd finished 24 hours, if you were successful and were first over the line, it was a great victory because you'd beat the world, you know.
Scrutineering is almost over. The crowds disperse again to the cafe for cognac and conversation on how formidable are the new Jaguar.
By 1955, Stirling Moss had defected to Mercedes, and together with the legendary driver Juan Fangio, would become a tough combination to beat. But Jaguar were back with the formidable D-Type, along with some new faces, including a tall, dashing blonde by the name of Mike Hawthorne.
Oh, Mike, he was a great character. Very debonair, and he took it very lightly. A lot of drivers, if we look at Stirling Moss, very serious contender for motor racing, kept himself fit, and he took it very seriously. Mike took it very sort of happy-go-lucky.
He was a great character, and we actually got along quite well, but people didn't think we did because he's a blonde and he drank beer and he's tall and I'm small and got no hair virtually. And you know, I was teetotaler. And they felt, well, we were different. And either you were a Hawthorne fan or a Moss fan.
Apart from Stirling Moss, I would put Mike Hawthorne as the best, probably one of the best drivers we had. Because, as I say, he was phenomenal. On the day, nobody could stand against him.
Mercedes air brakes rising and falling almost in unison. Behind them, Hawthorne and Fangio prepare to lap them.
The 50s were a time when motor racing safety was a far cry from the rigorous standards of today. Drivers frequently diced with danger as they tore along the straights at speeds of well over 160 miles an hour.
yes, it was dangerous, but to me, part of the thrill is because I'm risking my life. And you're going down the straight, and in a Jag, you're going pretty quickly, particularly in the later years. The guy's in there really thinking, my God, I'm going like the clappers of hell.
At Arnage, Hawthorne is on Levesque's tail with Fangio momentarily balked. The crowd is watching the rapid pit stops. Moss is busy with a stopwatch. All is normal. The race runs its appointed course.
What came next would be a catastrophe on a scale never previously seen at a motor racing event.
Levesque's Mercedes hurtles onto the parapet. Macklin's Austin Healey smacks headlong into the retaining wall as a tyre spins and subsides, silent and grotesque in this moment of disaster. A burst of flame and smoke rises high above the stand.
Pierre Levesque of the Mercedes team was dead, along with 81 of the crowd, who perished as his car plunged into the packed grandstand.
It was a disastrous accident, and I can remember so well that really being pulled virtually back into the pits by people leaping up and jumping off the few that were in the track, and seeing, of course, a lot of mess, really.
But rightly, the race goes on. Ivor Bueb looks down on the car he is to drive. New to the team, his thoughts at this time can only be imagined.
Ivor Bueb, who was a partner in Hawthorne, it was his first Le Mans. And I remember now, he stood there and he said, Norman, I'm not going out on this. He said, look at it. He said, this is crazy. And I said, Ivor, you've got to drive, the race isn't stopped. So when Mike comes in, you've got to take over.
He faces a duel with Moss on the Mercedes. What guts to get into a car at such a moment, but he does.
When Mercedes learned they had lost one of their drivers, they withdrew from the race, leaving Hawthorne and Bueb in their D-type to pick off the rest of the field. No other team would come close.
And there goes the winner, number 6 Jaguar. Hawthorne tours slowly back to the pit, and the applause that is the winner's due.
The win was Jaguar's third in 5 years, but because of the tragic events earlier, the taste of champagne would be bittersweet. 3 years later, Hawthorne would become Britain's first ever Formula One world champion, only to lose his life in a road accident before the decade was over. Jaguar had by now become the dominant force at Le Mans. The factory's experience of building aircraft during the war had taught them a useful lesson in aerodynamics, and the D-Type's sleek design owed much to this knowledge. It won again in 1956 and 57, pulling off a hat-trick of victories at Le Mans, their 5th in 7 years.
Privately entered Jaguars, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 6th, in a race few expected them to do well in.
That win marked the end of a golden chapter in Jaguar's racing history. For the time being, William Lyons felt there was little left to prove on the racetrack and was keen to concentrate on the business of producing road cars. It would be 3 decades before a Jaguar won again at Le Mans. In 1988, the XJR9 proved to be a competitive and reliable car, and by the time the 24 hours were up, it had won the hearts of the crowd as well as the race. 2 years later, they won again. It was Jaguar's 7th Le Mans triumph. The Big Cats were enjoying a second purple patch around this time, leaving the opposition green with envy. Back in Coventry, green is very much on the agenda for the Jaguar creatives. It's decision time for the final choice of the car's colour.
That's quite
It's
dramatic.
interesting.
Yeah, it's too dark though, isn't it?
That's too dark, and this is probably too creamy. We'll probably have to go to a much stronger white than the cream. It's quite interesting, the cream, but I think we need something that's much premature. So if we can get the white coming out of the brighter green, see what that looks like.
See, that's a strong green down at the bottom right now, but I don't know what the hell it would be like in a dull day on a starting grid on a black piece of road.
Well, then you'll be relying on the white.
Yeah.
That's what you see, but it needed white the whole time. It needed something like this from the beginning.
Absolutely.
I think we're at the point now where we've been through all the iterations and we've kind of got to hit it. And I think, we're
well, we know the blue one doesn't work.
Yeah, we've excluded that.
Excluded that. So it's really a question of this and
It's
this.
either
And it's a slightly darker
The
version.
reason Ian chose that is it's
this.
darker and it hasn't got as many yellow flips.
I would take Ian's choice.
Yeah, exactly.
The Jaguar thing, the spirit of Jaguar, and the whole business about it, I think is just going to be the best thing that we could have had for this next generation. Had we carried on as we were, I think we would have done all right. But I don't really think we would have done as well as we all wanted to do. And most of you have come here to win.
Good morning, Jaguar Racing. He's not here today. Can anybody else help you? Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
With the big launch now just days away, every last detail is being checked. Nothing must go wrong and nothing must look out of place. Not even Eddie Irvine's shoes.
Yeah, if you do that, can you tile these, Eddie?
Yeah, well, he's going to be able to tie them better than me, so I'll let you go. That's dead on.
Huh? Is that all right?
Yeah, actually comfortable.
Okay. For two pairs for you. Right. That's that one. Knowing that you're delinquent drivers is always a problem.
No, what I do is we leave this stuff in the truck so that I don't have to bring it to the races. It's always there.
And yeah, once you get to Europe.
Yeah.
But no good for Brazil or Argentina or Australia. Okay.
Jack Nasser, the president of Jaguar's parent, the Ford Motor Company, takes a keen business and personal interest in the racing team and visits the factory to check on progress.
The programme's actually well paced for the beginning of the season. I mean, and we have been competitive on times. We think the chassis is good, the engine's coming along well, we've got little glitches at the moment, but we're fairly confident about that. But on the other hand,
saying about double, right?
Well,
more than double.
Not nearly good.
Well, we've been present at the test, but we just haven't been able to complete the mileage. So it's been a bit of a dent to the programme from that point of view. We have, including today, 4 more days of running plus a possible run at Silverstone. So we're really hoping that we're going to be able to get back on track. This is a smooth track as well.
Yeah.
If you took you around Jerez or Monaco when they're hitting curves, it's a whole lot more violent than that.
I see what you mean now about the suspension movement.
Yeah, I mean that's maximum suspension movement.
Now is that Eddie or Johnny?
I think that's one of Eddie's girlfriends actually.
Go faster socks by Jackie Stewart.
Hello. How you doing? Yeah, fine. Park phone up, yeah.
It's now just one day before the launch. Time for a few final adjustments before representatives of the world's media catch their first glimpse of the new car. months of effort are about to reach a climax.
Okay, good. So it's clearly recognised. That, I think, is the only element of a cue that I have to concern myself with. And then I'm going to just go into the elements of that. Yeah. After this picture...
Jaguar's chairman, Dr. Wolfgang Reitzler, has flown in to launch the car. Reputations are at stake, and he's determined to take a hands-on role in motivating the drivers to deliver.
But we are as quick as last year's McLaren.
Maybe a little bit faster, a little bit.
But they will have progress.
Wolfgang does seem to be very, very excited about the prospect of Jaguar being in Formula One and being successful. And I think the whole thing that's looking very, very good and very encouraging is the commitment that everybody's putting in.
Did you see something?
No, we haven't seen the Jordan yet. No. It ran one day at Silverstone.
I tell you what, I want to beat Jordan. I mean, this can't be.
Oh, we've got to beat McLaren. Jordan, yeah, is one. But we need to be a McLaren.
I want to be number 3 next year. That would be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Number 3 next year would be a good time.
A good start.
Ferrari number 1, I would like that. And McLaren 2 and we 3. That would be a good start, no? And then we attack.
It'd be a good start.
And then
absolutely.
We go aggressively.
Yes, absolutely. No.
Launch day has arrived. The media scramble is about to begin and will continue for hours. The entire motor racing world wants to know about the new car, the new engine, the new drivers. In this sport, hype is just as important as horsepower.
By next year, certainly, and maybe even doing better than people might expect this year.
I'm sure that they'll give him the right level of support that will allow him to learn a great deal and to be...
We're trying to develop the car during the year as well. It's a new car now, but continuing.
Et aussi à Silverstone. Alors, je suis confiant qu'on sera bien prêt pour la première course de l'an 2000 à Melbourne.
I hope we can live up to it. That's the main thing. Big expectations. Small team and big expectations. That's really what worries me. Everyone thinks, people that don't understand Formula One think we're just going to come in and boom, we're here, guys. Follow us.
As the interviews draw to a close, one of the biggest stories of the day is about to be broken by Jackie Stewart.
Today, I'm going to announce that I'm going to retire as Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of our team. I need to move over and allow the people who are really doing the job to be given the space to do so. I'm not going away. I will attend most of the Grand Prix races, and I'll still be at the testing and still very much involved in the team, but not with the same number of hours.
Neil Ressler, the man who will fill Jackie's shoes, now moves into the spotlight.
As the new chairman of Jaguar Racing, my job obviously is to ensure that we have a competitive race team. The new car shows a lot of promise, and both Eddie and Johnny believe it has a lot of potential for the new season.
In some ways, there's an emotion that the partnership will now evolve into a different dimension, and a tinge of sadness that it won't be the same. But life moves on, and in this case, life has moved on very well for all concerned, I believe.
Tomorrow's papers will carry the news that the big cats are back. But for Formula One's newest racing team, the new season is just around the corner, and the hard work is only just beginning. Back at Silverstone, Eddie Irvine gets ready to put some more miles on the R1. Only constant testing can provide the team with enough information to make the new car fully competitive, and there is much to learn in a short space of time.
I can blast into the corner and get all the way to the apex without having to pick up the throttle again because it's, waiting on the front and then having to pick up the throttle.
The first thing
too
to
late.
do then is just come down to front and rear and just see.
Installation lap in this, but actually once past the pits. And this has got a different clutch characteristic, so just expect something a little bit different. When he completes this lap, we'll then call him in.
I tell you what, your steering is amazing. How much better it is than the Ferrari steering straight away. Whatever we did with the power steering, we worked never
We're
to
better
try
on
and
the
get.
power steering, we're worse on the clutch.
You know, like we worked forever
Strangely,
trying to get this power steering so that
You felt
it was, you were really in control of the car, and there was always a little bit of a flick on the turn-in. You never really got rid of that.
Just come back here, just do a start here, but we won't go around the corners quickly.
We're allowed to do the resetting like we did before, ignition off, ignition on again, but if you do that, then come back slowly.
Australia is so sticky at the beginning of because it's a raw track, and everybody seems to go out there, and all the unlikely guys seem to go fast early, which is what usually happens.
Less fuel.
Because they overdrive too. No, because if you bring in, you could go out there and suddenly see an arrow in the top three, because the young guy or whoever he is driving his ass off in order to get a decent time. The more mature guys are saying the track's dirty.
I like the mature bit. I don't older. Don't use the word older. Experience.
Well experienced. Well established. But if you suddenly get people slipping in banana skins,
we got to be the next ones there.
Exactly. And you might luck out a couple of times, but the point is you're lucking out when they're...
You need less people in front of you,
Absolutely.
so you luck in.
Absolutely.
The fewer people there, the
That's
better.
right.
Your pride is out there every Sunday afternoon for the world to see, and if you don't do a good job for whatever reason, it hurts, and that's what pushes you so hard, because you want to walk around the next days with your head held high, and if you've screwed up, you have another 2 weeks to wait before you can reprieve yourself.
But for Jaguar Racing, time has finally run out. Ready or not, the team must now pack up and go to Melbourne, Australia, for its first ever Formula One race.
So you always get to the beginning of the season saying, crikey, I wish we had more time to do this and this and this. But if you were given that time, you'd still be in the same position, because you'd still be trying to push the limits. And again, it's what Formula One's about. You're always challenging the limits. You just never stop pushing forward.
It's not the Olympic spirit alone which takes us to the Formula One challenge. It's not participating only and making a nice impression. We want to finally win.
I just don't really know how good Eddie and Johnny are going to be. It's too early to say, really. But if they, I think that they should be up there.
It's going to be great if we can get a good result. That's what it's going to be about. The result's everything. You know, all this goes before, during, and after. It doesn't really matter. It's the result that counts. And if we have a great result, then I'll be happy.
As a British driver at the British Grand Prix and with the British fans in a name like Jaguar, I think it's going to be a very special moment.
Jaguar are just arriving when those people have learned as many lessons, I think, in the time that they could have done, and are now more able to take on what I would call the big time. They can handle it.